take a second and let our attendees in. We're trickling in. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending Prospanica Philadelphia's first Procurement, Sourcing, and Supply Chain Management career event. My name is Jessica de Jesus. I'm the Prospanica Philadelphia chapter president. And I've been with Prospanica since 2017. I've been volunteering in multiple roles, but my full-time position is actually at the University of Pennsylvania, Stuart Weitzman School of Design, and I am the director of the Research Support Center. Prior to coming to Penn, I actually worked in the field of procurement, overseeing the public works and I forgot the rest of it, special services unit. I did that work for about 8 years over at the city of Philadelphia, and some of my colleagues are actually on this panel. And you know, procurement, when you think of procurement or purchasing or supply chain, you constantly think of, oh, Pam and purchasing. I need to get staples or paper clips or any of that sort. But what you don't know is that there are always, you know, events that occur throughout this purchasing career. One that I witnessed was the accident at the Northeast Corridor with Amtrak. That was such a big event. You know, procurement had to supply porta potties. Another one that I was actually involved in was the Salvation Army collapse on 20th Market that forever changed the way that the demolition work is regulated. So there's so much more, and these lovely ladies on this panel will be explaining what their roles are and what they do on a day-to-day basis. But a little bit about Prospanica in case you are new to our events. Prospanica is here to empower and enable Hispanic professionals to achieve their full educational, economic, and social potential. Prospanica has 38 chapters across the nation and 8 university chapters, one here in Philadelphia at Drexel University. All of the chapters provide resources, education, and support. And we also promote and market advocacy for the growth of Hispanic professionals in corporate America. Now, a little bit of housekeeping. You are all automatically muted upon entrance. Feel free to submit any questions in the chat at any time during our discussion. We will allow some time following the panel discussion to answer your questions. Now, let me introduce the lovely Natalie Santos. Natalie is a management leader with over 15 years of experience and proven record of creating value in sales, operation, and supply chain functions. As the Vice President of Specialty Supply Chain for Aramark, Natalie oversees local procurement, supplier diversity, and sustainability sourcing initiatives. She leads teams and strategic procurement programs that connect clients, consumers, and communities to strategies that drive business growth and local economic impact. In addition to Aramark commitments, Natalie is very involved in the community. She is motivated to pay it forward and make a positive impact as a mentor and as a scholarship fundraiser. Natalie shares her time and expertise on several boards and program committees, including PHL Diversity, a division of the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Greater Philadelphia Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Women's Business Enterprise Council, Eastern Minority Supplier Development Council, and of course, Prospanica Association of Hispanic Professionals. As part of these organizations, she expands her work towards addressing areas of DEI, support for young professionals, community empowerment, and economic development. Natalie graduated from Temple University's Fox School of Business, where she received her master's in business administration. She also earned a bachelor's in science with honors in international business with a focus on hotel and tourism management from Johnson and Wales University. Natalie is originally from New York City and now resides in Philadelphia. She enjoys traveling, dining out, and spending time with friends and family. Everyone, please welcome Natalie Santos.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for the overview and introduction. Again, I'm Natalie Santos, Vice President of Specialty Supply Chain with Aramark, and I am thrilled to be here with all of you to share about the wonderful industry of supply chain and procurement. So traditionally, people don't talk much about supply chain and procurement unless you are within that function, or maybe possibly an economist or in the public sector. It usually isn't one of those like sexy industries that people talk about. But given everything that's happened the last year, I feel like more people are becoming aware of supply chain and procurement, and most importantly, the impact of supply chain procurement when it comes to disruptions of said channels, but also how procurement and supply chain can really provide positive impact in communities. On a personal note, I'm sure a lot of you have gone to your favorite restaurants or grocery stores and maybe have noticed some things missing or asked for your special, dish. And the waiter mentions that, oh, we're running out of this ingredient, or it hasn't come in yet. So those are some of the things that I'm sure you've become a little bit more aware of this past year, unfortunately, due to COVID. So I am so, again, thrilled to be joined here with this esteemed group of supply chain and procurement professionals. So we'll be talking a little bit about our experience within the field this past year. But most importantly, these ladies are going to share their career journey, how they got where they are. And very much the purpose of this conversation is we hope you leave here with some nuggets of wisdom as you pursue your own career, whether you are in a professional career right now or seeking to join an industry, or whether you're a vendor. We're just here to share a little bit about our wisdom. We hope to motivate you and inspire you to continue moving it forward. And as Jessica mentioned, we will have some time for Q&A at the end. So with that, I want to give an opportunity for these amazing ladies to introduce themselves. So I will start with Miss Ashley Bazzani, then Dr. Erica Patterson, and then Janira Barroso, if you can go in that order and just share a little bit about yourself, your company, and your career.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie, for inviting me to be on your panel today. I'm really excited. So as she mentioned, my name is Ashley Bazzani, and I am a graduate of Penn State University. And I got a Bachelor's of Science degree. Thank you for the thumbs up, Dr. Patterson. I received a Bachelor's of Science degree in finance with a focus on business law. So currently I am a senior strategic sourcing specialist with PNC Financial Services. So if you bank with PNC, helping you get the things that you need, whether it's receipts or debit cards or anything like that. So what that means for me on a day-to-day basis is I support PNC's mission to buy things, whether that's goods or services, from small businesses and diverse owned businesses in the community. A large part of my role on the team specifically is to do so through an analytic lens. So making our supply chain data tell us what we need to know. And then from there, making an informed strategy based on that information. So in full transparency, I likely am the least seasoned supply chain professional on the call. I've only been in the field for about 3 or 4 years. So trying to get up to speed very quickly. And prior to joining PNC in this role, my background was in institutional investment consulting. So nothing supply chain related, nothing supplier diversity related. And luckily I had a lot of skills that made the position a great fit and a ton of interest and passion. And at the first conference I went to with the team, I'm just learning what supplier diversity is, learning what supply chain is at PNC. And I'm looking around and there's an expo. So all the corporations have different booths and I see one for Facebook, one for BMW, one for Google and Amazon, one for all the other banks. And it just blew my mind that so many of these organizations and corporations have these programs, and I'd never thought about it a day, let alone all the careers that can come with that. So excited to talk with you today and share some more.
Thank you, Ashley. Dr. Erica?
Yes, thank you so much, Natalie and Jessica and all of Prospanica for having me here today and amongst such wonderful ladies in the profession of procurement and supply chain management. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Dr. Erica Patterson, and I am the Director of Contracts Management and Supplier Diversity at Philadelphia Gas Works. I've been with PGW for about 8 years now. It feels like 20, but we won't go there. I've been in the field of procurement or supply chain management for well over a little over 15 years now. So I'm definitely a little bit seasoned. I feel like I say a little bit because I feel like every day it changes, and the novel coronavirus has definitely showed us it changes. So at PGW, I am responsible for managing all of our transactional, and I say the word transactional because supply chain can be a transactional function as it relates to procuring all of the goods and services for the organization. We are the 5th largest utility gas company in the United States, and PGW procures anything from a pencil down to the pipe we put down in the ground. The only item or commodity that we do not procure is the natural gas. I have a team of 6 buyers, 3 commodity buyers, 3 contract services buyers, and 2 support roles that also assist me. I like to call them my left and my right hand. That is my supplier diversity program administrator and our sourcing specialist as well. Without my team, I probably wouldn't be where we are today, because they definitely are instrumental in making sure that PGW does what we're supposed to do as a utility, and also engaging small and diverse and local businesses in our procurement opportunities. As far as my educational background, I actually fell into procurement. I started out in human resources, and it really wasn't nowhere for me to grow. And HR is still kind of like a passion of mine, so the company that I was working for at that time was Sunoco Incorporated, and a job opportunity came up as a procurement analyst. And I said, well, what better way to learn a company or an oil company than to join procurement? So I ended up going for the job. I got the job, and I never left supply chain ever since. So I have a degree, my bachelor's degree from Penn State University. I have 2 masters from University of Phoenix. And recently, last year, I just completed my doctoral program, and my master's and my doctoral program is in organizational management and leadership. As you can see, HR never left me. So thank you again for having me, and I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Erica. And Ms. Janira Barroso. You're on mute. Okay.
Okay, great. Good morning, good afternoon. How are you? I'm in such great company, and it's amazing. I haven't seen these ladies in such a very long time as we're working remotely. I'm so used to having in-person conference, and of course, having this virtual platform allows us to cast the net wider across the country and even worldwide. So I'm really excited to be here and be in great company with these ladies that share the same passion, the same stories to some respect. And of course, COVID has changed the game significantly. My name is Janira Barroso. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Procurement at the City of Philadelphia. I've been in this position for about 2 years, however, working within procurement for the last 6-7 years, and with the City of Philadelphia for over 15. I graduated from St. Joe's University with a Bachelor's of Science in Sociology, focusing on socioeconomics and sociolinguistics, and how that all tied in together pretty much helped me be in the position I'm in now, especially being able to be nimble, and the fact that in these times we have to be culturally sensitive to each other and the needs. And then also, as a city, the city is so diverse that it's important to understand the city's needs, the operational needs that the City of Philadelphia has. our day-to-day is, of course, making sure the city operates and relying on your staff and bringing your staff together so that the city of Philadelphia can operate at the optimal during these times, because of course we're faced with, COVID. We're faced with receiving refugees from other countries. The immigrant population is huge in the city. So we, again, having that background with sociolinguistics and socioeconomics and understanding culture and the social economic perspective in a city is very important.
Mhm.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Janira. So from what I've heard, all three of you in your introductions is it seems like none of you started out in supply chain or procurement. Either you don't have a degree in supply chain or procurement, or your first roles within professional industry was not in supply chain and procurement. And Janira, you shared that some of the transferable skills that you found very useful was, being nimble, communication skills was critical to your success now. Ashley, given that you're kind of the more junior, not so much junior, but a few years or so in already, can you share just a little bit of what skills you found from your prior roles that were transferable and really helped you succeed in where you are now? And then Dr. Arca, if you have anything else to share.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to, Natalie. And I think, as I'd mentioned in my introduction, that part of my role is really sort of analytics and number crunching, looking at what PNC is spending, how they're spending it, where they're spending it. And in my former role in investments, I was definitely doing analysis, but it was a little more routine reporting. But I developed a strong skill base in Excel. And from there, really was able to transition that to PNC, which is what I really love, because there's really a creative aspect to it at PNC. So there might be pieces of information in this system and pieces of information in this system. And it's problem solving to figure out, okay, well, how do we combine it all? How do we figure out if we have the risk of a vendor in this system and the payments in this system and the diversity status classification in another system? How do we get a summary view so then we can decide, okay, we need to be spending more with minority-owned businesses. We need to be supporting small-owned businesses in a better way. So I would say, there's the technical skills like Excel and things like that, but then also the creativity is how can you apply that to something that you're passionate about, that you enjoy doing, and that you can grow from there. So.
Thanks, Ashley. Dr. Arca, anything else to add to that?
I think, Janira and Ashley kind of hit it on the nose, being nimble, being creative. It definitely promotes that innovation when it comes to supplier diversity and also supply chain management. You definitely need to be innovative in this field because you're dealing with so many different stakeholders internally and externally, your vendors, your client departments, your team. You definitely have to be nimble. You have to be flexible. You have to be creative in ways to kind of get around, for lack of better words, the red tape. Because, working in municipality, there's always red tape. And Ashley, I'm sure within your organization and your business sector that there's always red tape as well. But two words that I would like to ask that I think as it relates to skill sets being transferable would be just collaboration, team collaboration. You definitely need that skill. And you can get that skill from being in any type of career or in any different industry. Being a team player is huge, especially in supply chain. You have to work together in order for you to get your end user what it is that they're looking for, the solution that they're trying to find from outside, rather be either from an external vendor or internally from a buyer. And then the other word that I would like to add is just persistence. I attended an ISM event last year. It was a virtual conference. And one of the things that came up from the breakout session, and the breakout session was called Empowering Women in Supply Management. I mean, this session was so great that one of the takeaways that I got from that was basically having a voice as a woman in supply chain, because it's already taught or said that we don't know how to negotiate as women. Well, I don't know what they're talking about, but we definitely know how to negotiate. And I think having a voice and learning what your voice is and how powerful it can be as a woman in this industry or in any industry, but more so in supply chain, because we are the ones who solve all the problems. I don't mean to be biased because we're all women on this panel and there's women on the call, or even men, no disrespect, but we know how to solve problems. We are the decision makers in the company. The only downfall that we see from a women's perspective as it relates to supply chain management and transferable skills is that there's not enough of us at the top. And that's where we need to get to. Right now, we're definitely doing what we're supposed to do. Supply chain, women in supply chain has increased over the last 3 years from 38% at the bottom and middle level management. But we definitely got some work to do to move up to the top. So don't be scared where you don't think that your transferable skills can kind of go from one career to the next. Guess what? They can. So I just, wanted to add that those comments as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Erica. And that's a perfect segue, because I would be remiss if I didn't point out that, this is a panel of all women professional executives in supply chain and procurement. And supply chain procurement historically has been a very male dominated industry. Even when I went in, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can attest, one of the first things you feel like you have to work twice as hard because there's doubt. Like, are you a tough enough negotiator? Are you a team player? A lot of sports metaphors get thrown around. I'm not a big sports person, so usually that goes over my head. So just like those little, obvious, biases, but also unwritten rules that you have to kind of maneuver through your career. In industries like supply chain procurement for women, it's, exasperated. And you really have to figure out, how to manage through it and have a support group. So, Erica, you made great points that I think it's amazing that we have seen progress over the last couple of years, but there's still a definite gap when it comes to female leadership in procurement and supply chain roles. So does anyone else want to add, Ashley or Janira, like your experience being a woman in this industry, things you've overcame, how you've done that, anything you'd like to share?
Absolutely. Erica did. Dr. Patterson brought up a very important fact. I would say about 5 years ago, and even till present day, City of Philadelphia is very diverse. And you would think that when you walk into a boardroom or a meeting of high management people, that you're going to see people that look like you, people that might be a woman. There's been plenty of boardrooms I walked in and I'm the only dark-skinned Puerto Rican woman to walk in. And I'm surrounded by men, whether white, black, whatever, but that very nature of this business made me tougher. I had to be tougher. I had to pivot a lot, because there's times where you're uncomfortable being in a room with all men. And I'm just being really transparent about it. However, where I found my comfort zone and my confidence is that I am knowledgeable. I'm here to solve a problem. I've been called to the table and pretty much knowing that me sitting at the table, I'm breaking the glass ceiling, and giving myself that kick in the butt, so to speak, because sometimes we want to hide behind, this, the notebook or the computer or behind closed doors and not understand what value you bring to the table. So understanding that knowledge, no one can take that away from you. Being able to learn from others and also letting those uncomfortable experiences build your character.
Yeah, absolutely. Ashley, anything else to add?
Yeah, I would love to echo what Janira had shared with us. And it made me think of something when she was talking about, not just sitting behind the computer or at a notebook, having that voice, that presence, right, where you're commanding the room. And I'd once read an article and it had talked about emotional labor and the invisible workload. And I'd never heard those terms before. And they talked about them obviously in a household, but in the workplace. So when women pick up the office housework, so bringing the cupcakes, taking the notes, planning the retirement party, spearheading the committee, and women, obviously, they're more likely statistically to volunteer for that, but we're also asked to more often. So it uses valuable time and energy, but more importantly, it causes women to miss out on potential opportunities. The person diligently taking the notes, they're hardly ever the one making the brilliant point. And it's not because they don't have it, but it's because they've been tasked with doing something else. And I never realized it until I read this article that that's kind of how my whole life has been. I've been the one, tasked with the extracurriculars, if you will. So I would say I'm slowly, but learning the magical superpower of saying no, evaluating what seems to be an opportunity, and seeing what the trade-off is. So if I do this, right, time isn't infinite as much as we'd love to put more hours in the day. So if I do this, what will I be doing? What will I give less effort to at work? How will it affect me personally? Will it take time away from my family? What will it ask of me and require of me? And then if the trade-off isn't worth it, then ultimately having the courage to say no.
Absolutely. The courage to say no, very powerful, especially as you progress throughout your career. Your time is essential. How you value your time and manage priorities is essential. So again, great points, everyone. I hope everyone is taking, again, these nuggets of wisdom. And if you have any comments, feel free to include them in the chat. And then questions, again, we're going to try and leave some time towards the end. So you can feel free to include your question ahead of time in the Q&A option. So shifting gears a little bit, focusing on the actual function of supply chain and procurement, specific to local sourcing and supplier diversity. All of our organizations have made significant commitments around developing local economies, supporting communities through supply chain and procurement. Again, given, with COVID, the impact and how Black-owned business specifically have been disadvantaged has really made the mainstream in media. So I'm proud to be part of, an organization like Aramark that's, reinvested even more around supplier diversity. And I know all of your organizations have done the same over the last couple of years. Would you mind, ladies, sharing a little bit about what your organization does around local supplier diversity and how you prepare businesses to work with your company? So I'll start with Dr. Erica.
Sure. So at PGW, we're definitely committed to supplier diversity and the inclusiveness of small and diverse and local businesses. As a matter of fact, one of our corporate goals is utilizing and including small and diverse businesses in everything that we do. One of the things that COVID has taught us, and again, I'm using this word that we've always heard since 2020, is pivot. Pivoting has allowed us, one, to look at our procurement rules, which were dated back to 1965. It definitely allowed us to introduce electronic bidding. So that made it a little bit more easier for our small, diverse and local businesses to participate, and not only participate, but to become aware of our procurement opportunities on this platform. So that was one. Another area was everyone was looking for PPE supplies. Janera, I know you know this. Ashley, I know you know this. I was getting sick and tired of the acronym PPE.
Yes, all too well.
Yes, but for the most part, it definitely showed us how, for PGW, we ended up going to just all diverse businesses, because a lot of diverse businesses were struggling during that time, and being hit by COVID. Their organizations were either not surviving or barely surviving. So we wanted to definitely, of course, increase opportunity and increase participation in those areas to reach out, to source, and to purchase from small and diverse local businesses. At PGW, as part of our commitment, we have learned over the last, I'm gonna say 6 years since I was introduced to supplier diversity, we have learned how to diversify all of our procurement practices. That allowed us to take a look at personnel. That's how I got the 2 support roles to come in and help me with strategic sourcing, to come in and help me with managing and facilitating the supplier diversity program. We were able to also look at creating a robust program where we began reporting metrics internally and externally. Just like any municipality or public owned company, we have to report our spend and our goals. So those goals are not only shared internally, it's shared with our board, it's shared with the Philadelphia Gas Commission, and at times it's also shared with the Public Utilities Commission as well. And then another thing that we had to implement was compliance. We definitely want to make sure that our diverse businesses, tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, are doing just that. They're being in compliant with their contractual obligations. They're meeting their goals of their contracts from a DBE performance standpoint. And they're also paying their subcontractors. We got to make sure the tier 1s are getting paid, and the tier 1s have to make sure that the tier 2s are getting paid. And then last but not least, one of the things that we also implemented during this time of COVID and even before COVID is all about communication and using your hubs of network. I don't want to stress that. I'm stressing that. I want to stress that because it's a great way to do so. For example, Janari knows I always call the city or email the city all the time to hear their successes and challenges as it relates to supporting and being an advocate and champion of small and diverse businesses, and also looking at different procurement practices as well. PGW is corporate members of WEBEC East, EMSDC, African American Chamber of Commerce, the Asian Chamber of Commerce. We're also very supportive of the Greater Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And we also do a lot of sourcing from the OEO registry. So we definitely have our hands in every pot there is to make sure that we're in contact with all of the small and diverse and local businesses to ensure that they know about PGW, how to do business with us, and how to find opportunities.
Thank you. Great points, Dr. Erica. Janira, anything to add, especially from the perspective of government and the city of Philadelphia?
Absolutely. So the city of Philadelphia has various initiatives. One that I'm going to drop in the chat, that is the local business purchasing initiative. That actually launched during the pandemic in July, I would say June 2020 of last year, where if you're a Philadelphia business owner and we're letting out contracts between $34,000 all the way up to 100. Right now, the threshold has increased to $103,000. And these contracts are let directly from departments. So we're pushing that local business, small business initiative at the department level so that they can engage that business community, allow up and coming small businesses to be able to compete on contracts with the city of Philadelphia. So that's one. And of course, I will be dropping that link in our chat so you could understand what is it that we do, what opportunities we have at the city of Philadelphia. At the procurement department, we partner with various city agencies like the Office of Economic Opportunity. We participate in doing business with the city on a bi-monthly basis. Also, we have the diversity and inclusion unit under the mayor's office that engages in how we can improve our diversity within, one, the employee diversity. Number two, also our vendor engagement, and then making departments accountable on engaging the local community, minority, and women businesses in the city.
That's great. And Ashley, I also would like to hear from you as the corporate representative on the panel. So from your perspective, in the corporate sector, private sector, how do you feel a supply diversity local procurement program really creates an impact? And also if you can add anything on, how you integrate with the broader diversity and inclusion office of your organization.
Absolutely. As I was trying to prepare for this question, my list kept getting longer and longer and longer, but that's a great thing, right? So I'll start small, so not small, but with my immediate team, right? Supplier diversity at PNC. As Dr. Patterson mentioned, we hold corporate memberships with all of the major organizations that advocate for and certify small and diverse owned businesses. So whether that's the National Minority Supplier Development Council or United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, that really we leverage those corporate memberships to reach small and diverse owned businesses that are interested in working with PNC, that can provide a good or service. And that really helps us to really broaden the net of suppliers that we can locate, that we can potentially work with. And so that's kind of where we're at with our team immediately. Within broader supply chain, it really prompted talks about our payment terms, right? How can we get money to these businesses faster, specifically small and diverse owned businesses, especially during the pandemic? How can we pay them quicker? so that then they have that cash flow to put back into their business, to use what they need it for. You know, it's not the same as when we pay, you know, a Fortune 50 company, you know, that dollar amount can do a lot more whenever a smaller diverse business is getting it quicker. So from a supply chain perspective, that's something that we've really been working to include, to make sure is in a lot of our contracts. And then I would say large scale PNC is really doing a lot of incredible work, and that sometimes it can be hard to even keep up with it all because there's different groups, right? So I would say from a corporate perspective, PNC did announce earlier this year an $88 billion commitment. And that is a community benefits plan. So it's over 4 years, and that $88 billion will come in terms of loans, investments, community development. There's a large plan for it that's really exciting. So we're trying to work with different groups within PNC on that plan. So as you mentioned, you know, the corporate diversity and inclusion group within PNC. So something that we're doing in that space is within all of our retail markets where we have branches where people can bank, they have their own diversity and inclusion councils. They're talking about initiatives in their local community. We kind of call it, right, our boots on the ground. So what we do then is partner with each of those markets councils to say, okay, well, what are you specifically doing in Philadelphia? What are you specifically doing in Atlanta? How can we meet the businesses that are in that area that want to work with PNC? So really trying to look at it from a perspective of, right, our first task is contracting, right? Is that procurement, that supply chain. But there's a lot of ways that our organization can help small and diverse owned businesses. So if it's not that contract, is it guiding them to our small banking business team to help them with some questions? Or maybe it's, okay, well, our banking team in Denver needs headshots. Can they use a minority owned business for that? So really trying to think, you know, holistically, we offer a lot of things. So how can we look at the whole picture of the business and offer the most that we can to that, that prospective supplier?
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. And we do have a question that came in. So this is for anybody in the panel. I think we still have a little bit of time, so feel free if all you guys want to contribute. What should be the first thing that a company should look to do to start a supplier diversity program?
That's an excellent question. And I would recommend joining a peer industry group. So the reason I say that is PNC, we're in financial services, and we're members of the Financial Services Roundtable for Supplier Diversity. So it's interesting because in the marketplace, we're all competitors. Everyone wants you to bank with us. Mm-hmm. But in this industry group, we're all peers. We're all rooting for these businesses. So we really learn a ton of best practices. There's actually, a guide as to how to start a supplier diversity program. And it's not unique to financial services. There's a lot of industry groups specific to technology or specific to different industries and how the best practices work best for them. So really talking to your peers, learning what works and doesn't work for them, and you'll find more often than not that they're really happy to help get you started.
No, that's great feedback. Janira or Dr. Erica, anything else to add?
From my perspective, I think that's a really good question. Again, starting out in supplier diversity 6 years ago, I had no clue what the field was about. And we did have an existing supplier diversity program at PGW. However, is not to take away from my predecessor, but I wanted to come in. The first thing that I did to learn what it is that the company was buying from goods to services was I took some time to assess all of our procurement opportunities that we had. That was one of the first things that I did to familiarize myself with the different areas of professional services versus non-professional services. And then also from an analytical standpoint, we actually hired a consultant to come in and do a disparity study to help us understand our spend from a utilization and availability perspective as it relates to procurement and also supplier diversity. And that study actually helped us create a baseline for setting our goals, for setting, putting in place an action plan as it relates to developing or redefining, or basically the rebirth of our supplier diversity program. One of the resources that I relied on quite heavily was Iola Harper, Victoria Hosendorf, Renice Lewis, Sharon Manker, Janira is one of them. These ladies, and Liz Walsh and Valerie Cofield, are phenomenal. And as I started to getting through that path of where I am now, they definitely held my hand and showed me the way. And Natalie, I'm so fortunate for you as well, because I met you along the way, that your circle truly do matter. So as Ashley mentioned, if you have those people in your circle or that you can use as a resource, lean on them. Another thing that I did was Diversity Information Resources is a company that offers seminars, programs, and trainings on those individuals or companies who are seeking to implement a supplier diversity program. When I tell you, they offer phenomenal seminars and strategies and they give strategies during these seminars on how you can incorporate a supplier diversity program and how it goes from being just words on a paper to an actionable program. So definitely take a look into that. I'll look them up. I'll put their link in the chat. Leslie Bounds, I believe is her last name, is the president. She's awesome. So I hope that answered that question. Janara, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah.
No, I echo pretty much everything you've stated, and of course, Ashley as well. I take a two-prong approach. I started a diversity program at the water department many months ago. So that was the approach. What the approach I took was looking at it from the vendor perspective and also the end user perspective. We had to understand who wanted to do business with the city and what we were buying. A lot of us want to set goals, want to set ranges, which because we do want to grow the minority business, the women business, the small business in our area. However, we need to understand who's available. And then how do we allow vendors to be able to pivot, again, using that word, vendors pivot as to what are we actually buying. The city of Philadelphia, we use taxpayer money. So I have to be very conscious on how, we spend money. And of course, we don't give contracts. We don't give away contracts. You have to compete. How do you submit a viable bid or a quote that can win, that can get you in the door so you can do business with the city? So we were at one point in person doing vendor sessions, engaging that vendor community, helping them understand the city's processes. If you don't know what you're doing, it's difficult. There's going to be missteps. Simple things can disqualify you. Even majority companies have been disqualified because of missteps. The city of Philadelphia has very strict guidelines that is governed by home rule charter, because again, we're spending taxpayer dollars and we have to be fiscally responsible. So with information, communication is key. Understanding who you're doing business with, what you're signing yourself up to do. I always encourage the vendors that I've met in my path, I should say, you have to have a diverse portfolio. Do not rely your business to survive by doing business with the city of Philadelphia. You have to have a diverse portfolio. And having that understanding came a little later for me. And I was doing an injustice to vendors by not divulging that type of information. So I had to train others to share that same information. So again, pivoting is key in communication.
Yeah, no, all great points. And, I'll share that I started in supply diversity about 10 years ago. And I think, Erica, you and I probably were one of the first people to connect, especially I also moved to Philadelphia at the same time around 10 years ago, but specific to my work in supplier diversity at that time, there was a predecessor that Aramark did have a program established, but my role was to really centralize the program. Prior, it was very decentralized. So different functions had different expectations and priorities. So I was expected to kind of bring everything in-house, create processes and systems. And most importantly, I felt the first thing to do was to really reevaluate our spend. So for me, if you ask me what's the first thing you need to do if you're interested in developing a supplier diversity program, is understand your spend. Because one, you could be working with diverse suppliers that you're not aware of. I understand that everyone may have the resources to hire a consultant or a third party, but it could be as easy as putting together a SurveyMonkey survey. Everyone has the contacts for their suppliers. Send out a survey, ask them, can you verify if you're a minority, women, et cetera? Can you provide a certification? Once you have that data, then you can tie it back to your AP system and you'll start building a database. In supplier diversity, your decisions are really driven by that spend data. Where are the gaps? Who do you need to source for? How can you build programs for development? So it's really important to understand your data first, but also in parallel, Ashley, you made great points. Building that ecosystem and network to support you. A supplier diversity program evolves continuously. You always have to work on continuously improving it, improving your value proposition. So it's so important to have that ecosystem of support for you to understand best practices. And absolutely one of the most, things that I'm so passionate about, being a part of supplier diversity and local procurement is that industry peers. So Ashley, again, you said it perfectly. We may be competitors in the sales market, but when it comes to supporting local, minority, women-owned, diverse businesses, we're in it together. We provide recommendations. We want to support these businesses. So having, again, that network to support you as you develop your program is so important. So again, if there's anyone on the call here that's interested in developing their program, I know all of us, will be available to support and provide recommendations. I see a lot of stuff in the chat already, links. Please review that and don't hesitate to follow up with us if you have any questions, and we can support you in those efforts. All right, so I do want to ask one question because we touched on it, a little bit here and there. Just going back to the dealing with the pandemic. So from a personal perspective, like, how are you guys doing? Like, how was it just, adjusting to working from home, managing a team remotely? So that's the first question. And then 1B is, how has your organization pivoted and evolved? Like, what are some success and challenges from the pandemic that you're kind of are key takeaways for yourself? So Generic, if I can start with you.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely have made a lot of gains. I'm one of those people, never glass half empty is half full. The pandemic actually allowed us to fast forward in some of the milestones that I wanted my staff to reach. And that was going completely electronic. While we had moved into electronic bidding in 2017, we still were doing in-person bid pre-bid meetings and pre-proposal meetings. That has now gone completely virtual, which is a plus. Having my staff work virtually as well, their performance has increased dramatically. Right now, we're back to a hybrid model and working, but I would say that it actually increased efficiencies working from home with a lot of the staff. The only downside is having that human connection, checking in on each other, and then also separating home life from work life. That would be the only downside that I would state, because of course I did see staff people that were checking in that would normally do, let's say, a 7:30 to 3:30, still working around 6 p.m. I would get calls from them at that time, which was like, whoa, why are they calling me? Something wrong? But, given the circumstances of having them work from home, that flexibility to still, if they had children or elderly folks that they were looking after, or just because we were in a time of having the quarantine, that allowed them to be able to, do multiple things from home. But I think just that main focus where it minimized the water cooler conversations around the office. So that was the upside of it. But, the greatest, accomplishments have been going totally virtual, being able to perform a job paperless. And that's something that was really hard for the city of Philadelphia to do. And it was done, and it was accomplished very quickly.
No, great. Well, I know the government loves the paperwork, so I'm sure it was tough to get used to, all virtual. Ashley, any thoughts from you around personal, professional, just getting through the pandemic?
Absolutely. I will say, one positive from a personal perspective is I really am a homebody. I love being home, and I have 3 big dogs, and I think maybe they're getting a little too attached at this point. But I have about a 2-hour round trip commute normally when I'm going into the office at PNC. So I don't know how I would have done it with that commute, but I think I've worked more hours this year than I ever have in my career. So having those, like you were saying, that extra time where you're not driving, you don't have that water cooler talk. So really being able to pour that back into my work has been extremely beneficial. I would say from a professional perspective, a large part of what the supplier diversity team does is connecting with those small and diverse owned businesses that want to provide something to PNC. And we do that through a lot of one-on-one matchmaking events. So kind of think, speed dating, right? 15 minutes here with a company, a corporation, and a small diverse business. Switch, do it all over again. It's a great way to meet companies. And then through large conferences, right? Attending conferences that maybe have thousands of people and meeting companies, learning best practices that way. So taking that away, was really a big blow. It's great to network and connect that way. And there's certain things that just don't transfer to a virtual platform, right? That in-human connection really, really drives. So it was an adjustment, but I will say what it has allowed is our team has been able to meet actually with a lot more businesses where maybe our budget wouldn't have allowed it, right? We don't have to travel to a conference on the West Coast to meet with the West Coast businesses and be there. We can participate in the 3-day virtual conference, and it just costs us the registration fee. So it really presented more opportunities. Secondly, I would say it engaged our colleagues across supply chain within PNC. So just like I said, might not have the budget to hop on a plane and go to the West Coast. Well, now we have supply chain partners that can pop in to meet with a handful of businesses in the afternoon, but they have conflict with the rest of the conference. Or, they can join in on one session of a conference when they have time to learn a little bit more about, industry best practices, things like that, and then kind of go back to their day job. Whereas maybe we couldn't get them involved in supplier diversity before. So that's sort of, from a PNC perspective. And then from a supplier perspective, it really gave opportunities for new suppliers to step up where maybe we hadn't seen that opportunity before. So I know, I think it was Dr. Patterson had talked about PPE and never wanting to hear that acronym ever again. So it was really interesting. And again, my apologies if you hear the dogs in the background, they might be coming to life here. But PPE, so in the spring of 2000, nobody could find anything, right? PNC has over 50,000 employees, probably 30,000 or above are in the branches, meeting with customers, servicing customers. And we'd always relied on our main supplier, a huge provider, to get those things to us. So it's not that they can't provide them to PNC, they can't get them for any of their clients. So what it did was it opened up an opportunity, and even though it was driven by necessity, it forced us, but also, allowed us to work with an African-American owned company and a woman-owned company to get what we were looking for. And we continue to do business with both of those companies. So in a way, it forced us to think about supply chain in a different way, that maybe bigger isn't always better. And that these businesses are a fraction of the size of our main provider, and yet they were the ones to save the day. So I'm really glad that they got the opportunity, and, firsthand seeing those success stories that oftentimes, you can get, better service, better product, a better experience by working with a smaller, diverse owned business.
Thank you, Ashley. No, that's great. So I did have one question I wanted to ask all of you, but Dr. Erica, did you want to add anything regarding the coronavirus conversation?
I can just be really quick. From a professional standpoint, I can echo definitely what Janira said about moving forward and moving to electronic, making things more virtual, which definitely created or increased accessibility to PGW from suppliers. And also for my team, we definitely were not killing any more trees with the paper. So now we have an electronic platform that makes it easier for us from a cost perspective and also from a process time perspective when it comes to putting out bids and procurement opportunities. Now we just post them and go through this electronic system. Personally, I think Amazon is tired of me with all the shopping I've done throughout the pandemic. I'm coming to my house, my neighbor house, we're watching out for each other. It was just a whole lot between Amazon and the supermarket. So go figure. But one of the things personally that I've learned during the pandemic was self-care and patience. That we all have been zoomed out since 2020 or 2020, 21. And that has definitely taken a toll on our mental. I don't care if you are the strongest of the strongest in any career, self-care is very important. So I've learned the value in taking care of myself first in order for me to fill my glass and continue to move forward to fill other people's glass. So that was the highlight for me personally. And outside, I don't want to downplay this, seeing my son grow up. He'll be 13 on Sunday. So just watching him get older and he was home with us, that was the best highlight for me as well. So thanks, Natalie.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So final question, just to wrap everything up. Can you guys share, in a minute or less, what are some final thoughts or advice that you would give to someone seeking a career in procurement and supply chain? And Dr. Eric, I'll start with you.
Wow. Supply chain has many avenues. There's logistics, warehousing, operations, procurement, contracts management, supplier relationship management, sourcing. You name it, we have it. And remember, all skills from any other career are transferable into supply chain. The ladies on this panel are examples of that. You can be successful in supply chain if you're a marketing major or a math major. Either way you look at it, you definitely need analytical skills. You need to be assertive, and you don't even need negotiation skills. You just need to know how to talk to people and communicate. Supply chain and supplier diversity is a passion of mine because it creates opportunity and it brings opportunity. And it allows us as women to continue to keep climbing that ladder and bringing our own table and chair if we have to, in order for us to have a voice. This is definitely the space that you will want to be in. If you feel that it's not for you, I'm going to try to convince you. I'm also the president of ISM, which is the Institute for Supply Management. I'll put the site in the chat. It's an organization to support supply chain professionals. And now that supplier diversity is in the mix, we also support supplier diversity professionals as well. Take time to get to learn supply chain. That's one of the things that I did when I started out early on, and look where I am now. Look where these ladies are now. It's definitely a profitable career, and it definitely will bring value to you. If it drives you crazy, just call us because it drives us crazy too. But there is some positive sides to it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Erica. Janira, and then Ashley.
Sure. So I would, my advice would be, if you want to be part of something bigger than yourself, supply chain management is definitely it. I told my staff one time, and I feel that because in this field, people will look to you as being the savior, which you will be. You will be saving a lot of people. However, there are rules and there's regulations. I always say, you want to stay out of procurement jail, you have to follow the regulations. But it's more to that. If you want to be part of something bigger than you, especially at the end of the day, when you're driving home and you see that stoplight, you did that. When you see a patrol car, you did that. When you see a construction site, you were part of that. And it's just, even if it doesn't mean about accolades, it's about telling yourself, and I'm glad, Dr. Erica, that you mentioned your son, watching him grow. For me, it was having my son see what I did on a daily basis, because he thought I just sat in an office all day and did nothing. And him being able to see what I do on a daily basis and the people that I have to engage with in COVID response and being part of the logistics in Philadelphia, and then also dealing with other projects within the city, he came to realize like, wow. So now he's working hard at his school and getting his education so that he can be part of something bigger. So if that's your desire to be part of something that can be memorialized, not because of accolades, but because your children or whomever is, as a family member can remember you by that.
Thank you, Janira. And last, Ashley?
Thank you, Natalie. Had to pop off mute there real quick. I would say it's general saying that I've really resonated with me, but I apply it to my, my career as well. But it's from Mother Teresa. And she had said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. And the reason I love that so much is because, whoever family is, it can be your coworkers, it can be your friends, it can be your actual family. But as you had mentioned, Natalie, that ecosystem. So while we're all destined, to do big and great things, that a lot of times it kind of starts with the basics and those building blocks of that strong foundation and growing from there.
Wonderful. So, that's it for me. Thank you so much, everyone, for the panelists, for great insights, for joining us. Jessica, I don't know if you want some final remarks.
Yes, thank you. What a dynamic group of ladies in procurement, supply chain, in supplier diversity. I am so excited and so happy to continue to share this conversation. This has been recorded. It will be shared on our YouTube channel. Please follow us on LinkedIn under Prospanica Philadelphia, on Instagram, and on Facebook under Prospanica PHL. And all of the resources that were shared in the chat will be sent out to everyone that has attended the call. And then we will also share that via newsletter for all of those who want to continue to have this conversation with these wonderful ladies. Thank you, Natalie, for moderating. Thank you, Ashley, Janira, and Dr. Erica for your insight and your experiences. And we look forward to having more of these soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank